Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my place. I have a recording of an elder that's giving a talk, and part of it about Jehovah's Witnesses may, possible soon, could be thrown in jail, thrown in prison for all the wickedness of the religion. We know Watchtower is almost ready to be destroyed by all of their evil deeds and all the evil that bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses are doing. Killing people, killing friends, blood sacrificing, Watchtowers doing to their own members. It won't be much longer Jehovah's Witnesses religion will be destroyed. So is this a fear talk? What this elder's giving, the possibility soon Jehovah's Witnesses, if they don't renounce their false religion, renounce going door to door with their false teaching and trying to brainwash people and coming into this false religion, very possible Jehovah's Witnesses could be in prisons, but I hope they will wake up soon. But someone brought up my attention this morning, and so I'm going to add this to this video. What about the children, young children, who's indoctrinated into this evil cult? What is going to happen to them when their parents could be put in jail, could be put in prison? What's going to happen to these innocent children that's been indoctrinated by their parents? Only time will tell. But this guy talk is trying to encourage the witnesses that you have plenty opportunity in prison to keep your faith going. Faith of what? I like to say faith of lies, dishonesty by the governing body, trying to get Jehovah's Witnesses just to do their bidding, to do their corruption, be a slave, to obey, no questions asked. So I'm going to end this part of me, and you listen to this guy's talk, and then y'all can leave a comment. So enjoy your day, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye bye.
Such times of tribulations, Jehovah's Spirit will comfort those who rely entirely on Him. Now, ask yourself this. If I was ever put in a situation or fell under circumstances where I was isolated from my family or from my brothers and sisters, how would I fare? Ask yourself, how strong is my faith? Could you face up to constant interrogation and years of isolation in perhaps prison because you desire to keep your integrity to God and yet not falter? See, when a person is thrust into isolation, what exactly can he do? You're by yourself, perhaps in a small cell or a small room, what can you possibly do? Well, one thing you can always do is review the Holy Scriptures in your mind. Think upon God's dealings and his works. Think of Bible examples of endurance and faithfulness. Examples such as Joseph, who spent years in prison, and yet he was not really alone. Jehovah did not forsake Joseph. Think of the many apostles who were often put in prison, and yet they kept their integrity. Now, a Christian who is in isolation due to persecution can do as the psalmist Asaph did when he was in great distress. Notice what he says at Psalm 77. That's Psalm 77. And let's look at verse 2, and then we're going to jump down to verse 12. It says, "In the day of my distress, I search for Jehovah. At night my hands are stretched out to him without ceasing. I cannot be comforted." Notice what verse 12 says. "And I will meditate on all your activity and ponder over your dealings." Now, with the psalmist Asaph, he did a lot of thinking when he was in a difficult situation. He appeared to be forsaken by God. And for him, the situation looked bleak. He didn't know what to do. But what did he do to sustain himself and to hold fast to Jehovah God? Well, he said that I will meditate on all your activity and ponder over all your dealings. So he concerned himself with Jehovah God's past activities and his dealings on how Jehovah had delivered his people in the past. See, Asaph knew that just as Jehovah had taken care of his people in the past, he knew that Jehovah was going to take care of him as well. And as Asaph the visionary was never alone, because of his meditation and his trust in God, it is also true of God's modern day servants. Consider the example of a missionary, Brother King, who spent 5 years in isolation in a red Chinese prison. Now notice what he says on how he kept spiritually alive. It says that right from the start, I realized that I would have to take steps to stay strong in faith. No sooner had I been locked in my cell on the day of my arrest that I got down on my knees to pray. To keep alive my appreciation of spiritual things, I arranged for a program of preaching activity. But to whom does one preach when in solitary confinement? I decided that I would build up some appropriate Bible sermons from the things I could remember and then preach to imaginary characters. Then I started out to work, as it were, knocking on imaginary doors and witnessing to imaginary householders, visiting several doors during the morning. All this I did aloud so that the sound of these things would further impress them on my mind. I am sure that the prison guards thought that I was going out of my mind, but it was really keeping me strong in faith and of sound mind. Or consider the example of a brother who was in a Nazi concentration camp. Now, although the prison officials took the Bible that he possessed away from him, they thought by doing this, it would defeat our brother. They thought that his faith would become weak and that he would renounce his faith. But they failed to realize and recognize that this brother had impressed the truth of God's word deeply within his mind by personal and group Bible study long before he was imprisoned. They simply could not remove those faith-strengthening truths from his mind. So what will help us then to rely on Jehovah, as did these brothers who stood firm despite being persecuted and isolated from their families and their brothers and sisters? Keep Jehovah at your right hand constantly. Notice what Psalms chapter 16 says. That's Psalm 16. And let's look at verse 8. It says, I keep Jehovah before me constantly. Because he is at my right hand, I will never be shaken. So keep Jehovah before you constantly. Now, we can mentally put Jehovah in front of us by trying always to please him. Be positive. Know your God. By keeping him at your right hand, Jehovah can uphold you with his left hand as he fights for his people with his right hand.